let's get started. Let's dive into the topic. So what I would do is I will start sharing. Again, today I'm a little more prepared, so I have a presentation flow to start the discussion. We will talk about two things. We want to talk about efference copies, because that caught my attention, that topic caught my attention, because I think it has much more than what the white papers are talking about it. And then we go to proprioception, and we start with the efference copy to the physical part of it. And then, as I invited Paritosh, because I know, at least in the people that I know, I think he's one of the best persons to talk about psychological proprioception, then from David Bohm's side. And then feel free to interrupt anywhere in between, feel free to tell your viewpoints, and then let's get started. So let me start sharing my screen. And let me know once you can see the presentation. Yeah, I can't see you guys. So if you're nodding, I don't know now, because now I'm.
Yeah, we can see it.
You can see it? Okay, let's jump into the topic. Yeah, and let's take this slide just as a launchpad to start our discussions. So the Hermann von Helmholtz, right? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but out of a lot of psychologists, I think he, for me, gave a very simple approach and a very well-defined approach onto efference copies. So what he says is that the brain needed to create an efference copy for the motor commands that control eye muscles. For example, it's related to eye muscles, motor muscles, all of it, but he started with eye muscles, so as to aid the brain to determine the location of an object relative to the head. So what he's telling is a very simple experiment. You can do it right now. So take your finger, and while your eyes is open, softly, mind you, softly poke the eyeballs, right? If you poke while that eye is open, if you poke your eyeballs, you see that there is a shift in what you are seeing. The world shifts. It either goes up and down, it goes side by side. So if you poke the eyeballs from below the eyelid a little bit, right, you see that there is a movement that your brain captures for the screen or wherever you're seeing. But now if you move your eyes without the poke, now if you move your eyes regularly, right, from side to side, you don't see the world moving. Do it. It does it. It stays. Everything is stationary. Everything is stationary, right? This is efference copy, which means when your brain is guiding your eyes and your brain knows that you are now going to move your eyes, it also knows that it has to negate the effect which is unwanted, which means there is nothing moving out there. You are moving your eyes and everything else is steady. Versus if you do this, because it is not command by the brain to the eye, you see the laptop is now tilting for me or jumping for me, right? So that's a very easy way of looking at the efference copy into action. So efference copy, and unless you are very, very, very ticklish, generally you would not feel as ticklish if you try to tickle yourself as an external entity tickling you. So much so that there have been experiments done where there were robots used to have a feather and to tickle you versus you trying to tickle yourself, right? So this is again one of the examples of efference copy, where you say that you know upfront, you predict what's going to happen with it, and then you negate the effect of it, right? Similarly, for example, when you rock your head, your inner ear balance and your eyes are all should be telling you that there is an earthquake or things are moving around you, but it doesn't tell you, because again, there is an efference copy which then negates the sensory impulses or sensory information that's coming in now, right? So this is where the efference copy is used in psychology. It's used for motor movements, it's used for visual, it's also used for verbal and sound things. And this is where it starts getting a little more. So if you see some other examples of it, is the gaze stability. So if you walk a little tilted, you will see your head, neck will tilt to try and balance out with your horizon. The grip force, even if you're holding a bottle and if the weight is increasing, your grip is automatically, it's predicting an increasing almost without any lag, right? Tickling, as we just spoke about, right? So all of these are very powerful, very simple examples of how efference copy is coming into action into our day-to-day life. Now, from a perspective of maybe in psychology therapies and etc., I think efference copy and semantic satiation is what I wanted to touch upon. So I think in psychology phenomenon, the semantic satiation, we know that if we repeat the same thing louder again and again and again and again, the meaning of that word or the phrase is lost, at least temporary, if you like, right? And that's also with something that you keep seeing or staring. The meaning of it loses. And this is where maybe I just wanted to touch upon and get your feedback on efference copy, because then we switch from efference into proprioception. That there is a very interesting phenomenon on the internal voice and the speaking out loud. And that works in therapy a lot. So most of us who have been into therapy would know that just griefing out, just telling it out. When a person speaks out something, the impact, the effect of it is gone. Whereas if it is a rumination, if it's a constant internal talk, it in fact, the gravity of that emotion increases, right? For example, if I'm constantly telling me inside, oh, I screwed it up, I screwed it up, I screwed it up, I screwed it up, I keep feeling more and more and more and more bad. But then I'm on coffee with doctor and I would say, doctor, you know what, I screwed it up. I spoke it out loud. And that is a very powerful aspect which may have some touch points with the efference copy approach and semantic satiation approach, that the internal voice, even in positive, an internal affirmation, a constant internal affirmation, a constant internal courage is way more powerful than the word that comes out. So much so that in many cultures, if you would find this, that when they talk about chantings, they talk about 3 levels of chanting. One is loud chanting, so that you get into practice of it, but it loses its meaning. You do soft chanting, they say it's much more impactful. And if you keep that chanting internal, that is when the real effect happens. Why do they tell that? Maybe that all connects psychologically to these points. But before we go to the proprioception, I want to stop here, get your views on this topic, from what you heard or what you have experienced in your life. What do you think? What do you feel when you, or what are the insights that you might want to share around this topic? Does it connect? Does it make sense?
Billy sent a very interesting question to the chat. I don't know if you'd like to discuss it.
It's very interesting.
I would like to ask the question, because I do know that by saying something you wear it off. So you've heard it so many times it becomes invisible or loses the strength or whatever. But then are some repetitions, like for example, when you're praying, that you're in Christianity going through the rosary again and again and again, saying the same prayer, or with mantras, and this repetition of things that throws you into a specific trance.
Sure.
What happens with this purposeful repetition? Because it's not the same looking everywhere at someone who has a catchy phrase that everybody's saying the catchy phrase, than having the purpose behind of doing this repetition. How is that going to work in our brains? Are we going to discuss this later? Should I keep this for later?
No, we can discuss it now. I mean, from what I mentioned, my 2 cents, and maybe from my own practice, the purpose is very personal. That's internal. That's inside. Like a chanting which could be inside. And if it's inside, it's way more powerful than what's outside. Right? So if I tell myself internally, yes, I'm going to lift this 100 kg weights in gym today. If I internally, I think it gives me much more strength than telling, I'm going to lift it, I'm going to lift it. I'm going to say, no, I'm not able to do it. So, so what I think is, and then please somebody keep your points. I think whatever is internal, be it negative or positive, has a much more impact to our psychology than what is external, allowed out there, is what I would feel. And that has the therapy approach, right? So if you speak out the grief, it'll reduce. If you do an internal positive affirmation, that'll make you feel better, more and more better. How many times have we told ourselves, told other people, I'm fine, but internally we are not, right? But when I tell myself I'm fine internally, I'm fine. I know I'm fine, not to anybody else. I tell myself I'm fine. You are fine.
So in some way, this works like a two-edged sword. Like that if I am saying myself that I am angry at Jamin and I'm so angry and so angry and so angry, so this is and as Jamin shared this example that if I am chanting a mantra or something and I'm repeating it in keeping it in my heart, repeating it inwardly, not outwardly. So I think as a tool, it works as it has two sides.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, Parit.
What I'm thinking is that I found that very powerful, what you said, Jameen, that, if it's inside, then it has more power. I was just thinking of that statement. Yes, because if you see the bottom aim of therapy, the bottom aim of therapy is to make sure that the depression, the anxiety, the sadness, anything that is negative has less hold and less power on the individual who has come for therapy. And the fundamental way of doing therapy is, of course, talking. The more you talk about it, the less power that whatever that is has on you. So if we apply the same sort of definition to anything that we talk about versus keep it inside, I think, yeah, definitely it goes for happiness as well. I mean, at least in the Indian culture, we have been taught from a very young age, if you have something good that's going for you, don't say it out loud. I mean, don't tell a lot of people about it. Keep it with you and enjoy. Don't post, don't flaunt, And frankly speaking, I always, in my childhood, when I used to get good marks or something, and my mom used to say this to me, she's like, okay, don't get too happy. Don't get too happy. Come down to the ground. And I was like, what? I have worked so hard, so let me enjoy it. But I guess now I get it. I mean, maybe I get it. Maybe if I had gone aboard and overboard and kind of flaunted or whatever, maybe I wouldn't have been as successful as I am now. I don't know. I'm rethinking the whole thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter in this context, it doesn't matter whether your mom meant it in that sense or not. Today, it's a newfound meaning for you, right? And that's enough. I mean, that's your meaning.
She must have just told me because that's what her mother told her and her grandmother told her. And, it could have been just as simple as a repetition from, oh, my ancestors have told me that you're not supposed to do this. Yeah. But I'm getting the scientific meaning of that because it's effective. Yeah. Or rather, I see it now.
Yeah. And I think there may be one thing, it reminds me of our discussions last time, I think, expressing and what Paritosh was telling. So if I'm angry on Paritosh, I could keep it within me, the worst case scenario, because it increases. Second, I shout at him, which is, again, maybe it'll help me calm down. We all know if I shout it out, it's gone. I'm calmer, much more calmer. But the third thing, which is so powerful, and that is where in a lot of therapies approach, and even in life science, personally for me, if I tell it to Paritosh, you know what, I'm angry at you. I'm not just shouting at him, you are wrong and this and that and out of anger, but telling I have anger in me for you. And that expression then maybe calms it down completely. And then there is a different equation between me and Paritosh, maybe then, when I speak it out like that versus actually acting out of anger, maybe. Yeah. But I mean, Isabel, Alessandra.
And it also open a gate to explore that why do you have this sense that you're angry at me?
Yes, 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 yes.
I think Isabel wanted to speak.
Yes, I was thinking first about the differences when you're chanting, for example, in India mantra, or here in Catholicism, when you're repeating a small phrase, or I don't know the name in English, in Spanish is jaculatoria, how it sometimes gives you peace. And yes, if you're speaking it aloud, it sometimes became, you even change the order of the words and the words become something different. And then I was saying, okay, the positive and the negative, but then something came to mind when you said, oh, I'm fine. I remember when I was studying psychology, said that you're saying, oh, I'm fine. I'm feeling perfectly fine. And you're saying something with your voice, but your head is going the opposite way. And no, I can't believe you. And it's like how the two parts of your mind are, you're trying to make yourself believe something, but sometimes it's difficult for yourself to believe it. And it's not until someone else might point it out that, hey, you're saying that you're fine, but you're going like, no, 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 no. It's amazing how difficult it is for our minds to believe ourselves.
Yes.
When you say, okay, my mind is the one thinking, and it's the first one that should be believing me, but I'm not believing myself, not in myself, but I'm not believing myself. I'm not buying my own story. But sometimes when you express it in therapy and just someone is looking at you like right now and saying, yes, you're validating, you're giving that thought the weight and the meaning and the purpose of what it's ought to be. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
A lot of sense, Isabel. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing what you said. And I think some of these points maybe Paritosh will touch upon when we also talk about proprioception from a thoughts and mind perspective, right? It's such a powerful, silly stuff, if I can put it like that, right? But yeah, but thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So I would like to talk about proprioception with uh, uh, with uh, with a statement given by David Bohm, and I would love to examine and explore that how much truthfulness and factuality is in that statement. And once he said that we could say that practically all the problems of the human race are due to the fact that thought is not proprioceptive. And with this statement, he opens a channel, a gate to see what actually proprioception is. So the linguistic, if we start from the linguistic meaning of the word proprioception, so the proprio word means one's own, and deception, it is the word which means the perception of oneself. So the actual meaning of the word proprioception is the perception of oneself. So the state of proprioceptive is a kind of awareness on the most fundamental level of all kind of movements, physical movements as well as psychological movements too. So every thought, every emotion, and feelings are movements in our psychological system. Proprioception brings the awareness about all these movements. Our body holds this kind of awareness because it's pretty obvious and direct in nature. The intention of movement and the movement. For example, I don't know right now. I am talking to everyone, and there is no sense where my toe is. But if someone pins in my toe, or there is fire on my toe, suddenly the body reacts. The body has this reflexive system. The body holds this awareness. The body is not depending upon my conscious mind to react on that burn. So the knowledge about this relationship between the intention and action is very important in order to survive in physical reality as well as in psychological reality. The body cannot function if it loses its sense of proprioception. And David Bohm once mentioned about this this relationship between this the sense of body. Once he was talking about the motor system and the sensory system. He gave an example of old lady, and she was sleeping in darkness, and the bridge between motor system and sensory system was destroyed, and she started beating herself, and she touched her forehead, and she didn't, because of her motor system, she touched her forehead, but she didn't realize that she is this person who is touching her forehead. So she has this sense that someone attacked him, and she was sleeping in the darkness. And then she started, in defense, she started beating herself. But after the noise, when people came in the room and they turned on the lights, with this visual sensory perception, again, the bridge was established. She realized that she was beating herself. So in darkness, the sense of proprioception was gone in that case.
Yeah.
So proprioception, So proprioception in the body is another topic, but here we are interested in proprioception in psychological movements, especially in thought. The movement of body is directly related to the intention of movement. With thought, we may not be aware of or have the sense of proprioception, but there is an intention to think. Thought is also a movement, and the intention of movement, which is to think about or to think, is the intention behind that movement. The intention of movement, to think about something, is the cause, and the movement, thinking, or thought is the effect. In the situation of psychological conflicts and contradictions, it is very easy to detect this because the complexity the intention and the movement is facing. For example, the intention is about to do something, and it changes after a few moments. This state is making a kind of loop in which the intention keeps rotating and nothing is being done. Because the loop
can we emphasize on that a little bit? For me, it's going a little too fast, right? Can we emphasize on that movement of intention on thoughts? But before that, did we all understand the basic concept of proprioception? Right? For me, I mean, in a very, very layman term, we all have sixth sense. You know how? Close your eyes and then try to touch the nose with your eyes closed. Can you do it? Wow. Wow. You know where your nose is, right? That's the proprioception. Pilar, sorry, Paritosh, I didn't want to interrupt, but
no. Yeah, yes, yeah, please.
That's the proprioception basic from where we start, right? And then what Paritosh is now going towards is proprioception, not physical, not knowing where my hand is, not being. I don't have to think and concentrate where my nose is. I know it, right? And now we are talking about maybe a similar proprioception in thoughts, in psychology, right? And that is where Paritosh was talking about the movement of intent. So Paritosh, if you can help with slowing down on that example, and then we hear it from everybody on what they understood by it.
Yeah. So for example, that you said that you have this anger on me. You have this sense of angerness towards anyone, and then you just react or you just behave out of the impulse of that anger. Now, there is an intention, there is a hidden intention that, there is a cause, that there must be a case, there is a context that why you are angry at me. So if you just react on that, then I think then there is a lack of proprioception, because feelings, emotions, all these things are involved in that moment. But what if you just acknowledge that I have this anger on you, I have this sense of anger on you, and I don't know why this is happening to me. And what if we explore, what if we investigate, what if we examine that why this anger is arising in me? Now, what just happened is that you acknowledge that there is an anger. You are not suppressing it. You are not reacting out of it. But in some sense, you are suspending it. And in that suspension, there is an openness to inquiry. There is an openness to examine where is that coming from. And there was a person, I think his name was Ari Marksley. He was one of the person who was associated with J. Krishnamurti Foundation. And he said that he described proprioception as a psychological sense organ.
So like I know I have my nose here without even putting any effort. I know that anger came, or there is anger in me, and I'm aware of it. I'm not telling it to go away. I'm not telling my nose to go away, but I'm aware that I have an anger, and I'm based on that awareness, I'm not just reacting, right? So whether we react or act is even the later phase, but just being aware that I have anger now to start with. I think that is where the start of psychological proprioception is what you're trying to bring up, Paritosh, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, anybody, any comments on this? And I was discussing this with my wife, just giving you context to open up the discussion. I was discussing this with my wife and she's saying, why the hell should I think about it? And I like that response, right? So, but yeah. But anybody, what's going on in your heads when you're hearing this?
The first thing that's coming to my head is with respect to how less of an attention or even any sort of awareness that we are even trained to have with respect to our feelings. We went through this a lot in our in my counseling training, right, where we talked about cultures like India and let's say a few other countries in the world who are very, very dismissive of emotions.
Yeah.
Or rather, you do not have, an individual does not have a permission to feel what they are feeling, right? From very young age, you're like, if you're sad, you're like, okay, get over it. Or if you're happy, you're like, okay, don't get so happy. Or if you're angry, you're like, no, we don't show anger in our family. No, you can't throw things, you can't talk loudly, you can't use swear words. It's always you can't, you shouldn't, you can't, with respect to any emotion. I mean, take love, for example. When we have a crush in our teenage, what is the first thing we are told by our friends and our parents or whoever it is, that we go, no, it's okay, focus on studies, all this will come later. It's an automatic thing. So we are so deeply trained as to not even acknowledge that we have feelings, that, and this has happened to me in the first few sessions of my therapy, that when my therapist asked me, as a part of our course, we have therapy, and that was one of the best things that happened to me. And my therapist asked me, okay, but I'm telling her, I did this, and he said this, and she said this, and she asked me, okay, I get all that. Just how are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
And
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and I was like, huh?
Yeah.
What? I'm like, what does that mean?
Right.
Right? And she's like, yeah, just close your eyes. Just, how are you feeling right now? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling right now. I'm like, I'm feeling right now. And that it took me a good 5 minutes to get used to that itself, that, I'm feeling. And then putting that into words was even more difficult because I had never done it before in my life. Yes, I had used the words angry, sad, happiness, but I didn't really know what they meant. And I wasn't talking about what I'm feeling. I was just describing, I was giving adjectives to, in a conversation. So that was a very powerful statement to see. I totally get this aspect of thought proprioception or proprioception or psychological proprioception, because it is being aware that I have feelings and I can feel, like an out of body experience, and like, oh my God, this girl is feeling, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's quite powerful.
And not only do we feel, but first we don't know we feel, then we don't know if that is the right feeling we are naming. The racket feelings that we had a session, right? I'm feeling angry. No, you are feeling sad. You're not feeling angry, maybe. Yeah, so there could be, yeah. But I mean, if now in this, yes, Isabel, I mean, in this group now, just one second, in this group now, if I ask, how are we feeling? Can we tell it? Can each of us tell it right now? How are we feeling?
It's, well, it will be a very interesting therapy session, but from what the doctor was saying, I remember when I also had to go through my therapy stand while I was studying, and then I did therapy for about 5 years. But I was thinking maybe this can help us all, because it was very enlightening for me. Because we think of proprioception as something that has to do with the physical, like being able to touch your nose with your eyes closed. But sometimes the link between, we say, okay, I get it here, but I don't get it here. And when I was doing the training in art therapy, and I was talking with Pili about something like this the other day, when we were studying clown with our clown teacher, who actually he has been all over the world because he works with Clowns Without Borders. For example, during the earthquakes in Mexico and during after the tsunami in the South Pacific, clowns went there. And it's funny because when they got to customs, they said, okay, you're coming to help. What are you bringing? My nose, my red nose. And they were like, what? And it's impressive when you put your nose for the first time and you become a clown, how those things that you're feeling, that you're unable, sorry for the whining, is a dog, and you're unable to say them, your body can express them. And sometimes by just going with your hand like this, and you say, okay, you're not angry, you're sad. Or where you're going like this, you're not excited, you're angry. So sometimes we need our bodies. I think, I don't know if you have given some thoughts to this. We need our bodies to be able to help us put our feelings into words. And it's amazing how powerful the body can be then, because when you have a neurological affection, sometimes being able to touch your nose becomes impossible.
Yeah. I will touch upon that very quickly, the physical part of it, because it has a very nice, simple, but a very powerful approach in cognitive behavioral therapy, using proprioception expressions, as you call it, to work around the unknown physical symptoms of anxiety and depressions and etc. I'll touch upon that very quickly, 2-3 slides, not more than that, but then we open up. Yeah, but that's really, really powerful, really powerful. Pilar, Alessandra, Emina, want to say anything?
Yeah, I was thinking about Isabel was sharing, and some months ago I used to have ballet classes, and the way that Isabel pointed out, my teacher told me that she made an exercise like expression with my body, my feelings, or any kind of feeling. And the movement that has a rise on that, because, you know, the connection between body, mind, and spirit, it was like a kind of dance there. So, well, I was thinking about right now that you were saying the neurological part that take place, because when I was dancing, there were many things that I haven't been aware. When she told me that now you express angry, and now you express sadness, and now express that you are happy. And when I was expressing happiness, it was an easy movement. But when I was expressing anger, it was like a kind of difficulty on there. So, well, now I'm like curious, how does clown make these movements?
Right.
Well,
And by the
no, go ahead,
sorry.
Jimena.
By the other
No, go
hand,
ahead.
I was thinking about participation and this talking. Are we conditioned just to express some few feelings? Because you can't talk directly with another person to tell them or tell her or tell him that you are angry with he or she, because you don't know how does that person is going to react. Because I think that it's part of the conditioning. So
in clown, I'll tell you also, but I wanted to point out that it doesn't only happen with movement. Movement is the easiest example, but for example, with drawing, with sculpture, it happens. And the thing with clown is that I don't know in India if it happens in India, but in Mexico, the idea of a payaso, of a clown, that's why in Spanish we also make the difference, because we're used that clowns are going to make fun of someone else. And when you're doing clown, you're starting by doing fun of yourself. So when you're allowing yourself to mock you, you're giving you permission, you're allowing yourself to express something that we usually are conditioned not to express. And it's a very powerful and wonderful experience doing it, because when you're allowing, because we usually make fun of ourselves. You say, oh yeah, you dropped something, and oh, how clumsy of me, or oh, as usual, I say the dumb thing. No, but it's different when you're repeating something, like we were saying at the beginning, I'm stupid, than to act on that, to be okay, allow yourself that sometimes you can be stupid and you're going to trip and fall. And that's part of how clown works, allowing yourself and giving giving worthiness or giving value to what you're feeling and what you're sensing. Because sometimes you sense something and feeling and thinking. I love that image of the client coming to the therapist with a big knot of yarn, and the therapist just gives him a very nice round ball back, and the client comes back next week and it's another mess again. But it's clown for me. I want to work more. Unfortunately, with the lockdown, we haven't been able to, but it's really an amazing work, and it's done by my teacher is a French guy. His name is Alain Binot, and he has written 2 books. You can find them on Amazon. I think they're in Spanish. I don't know if they have been translated, and actually they made a documentary of his work. I don't know if the documentary, how you can get it from other places, but it's really amazing. I will write down his name, and I will send you a picture of the first book that I have. The one I haven't got it yet, but it's really amazing, and it's wonderful work.
I mean, you should take a next Friends of Friends session on the clown topic. Yeah, we are all now intrigued. It will be fun if you can take a session on this.
I would love to. I would love to.
Please do that. Please do that.
Isabel, I was just thinking, you know, the thoughts that are coming to my head as I'm listening to you with respect to when you said the clowns, you know, they make laughing about themselves into a sort of, see, usually what happens is when we trip and fall, or when we say that, oh, I'm so clumsy, it's actually a defense mechanism, right? It's like, okay, let me just call myself clumsy so I don't feel bad when somebody else calls me clumsy just because I tripped and fell right now. But I was just thinking, what the clowns are doing is that they're finding power in embarrassing situations. I mean, they're empowering the other person to also think that, hey, just because you're in embarrassing situations that other people might laugh at you, you still have the power in your hand to, you know, make that embarrassing situation into a you know, self-lifting situation. And the idea I got this from is a book by Brené Brown called The Power of Vulnerability. I think I've mentioned that a couple of times before in this thing. That was one of the most powerful books I have read with respect to how to make vulnerability. I mean, actually coming out and saying that, hey, you hurt me. I mean, saying that to somebody is such a humbling experience. I mean, it's not everybody can do that. You know, so just come to a person who has deeply hurt you and say that, hey, you've hurt me. But yeah, so I was just thinking maybe there she's talking about strength and vulnerability, and what you were saying was strength and embarrassment, you know?
Of course. And
that's very powerful.
Yes, and it works also not only on a personal level, but on a group level. Align in one of the, well, we can, because sometimes when you do something clumsy in front of someone else, yes, you're allowing them to make fun of you, but you're the first one. And sometimes clown work is best done in groups because you're inviting someone else into your humiliating or your mocking situation, and you're giving each other strength and you're giving each other support in order to release things. This is my clown nose, and the first time that we made a scene, I said, okay, the nose has two purposes. One, it allows you to start acting, to be your clown self, and another, it sounds disgusting, but it's the best. I forgot the word. Substitute for a tissue. Because when you start crying, because you end crying, everything that you're crying, all the snoot comes into the nose. And it's amazing how everybody starts later cleaning the nose. And yes, and you want to stuff it in with tissue, but I would love to make if you want to make a Friends with Friends session, and I would, yes, and I will try to talk to Align and see if they can give us a link for Brain d'Amour. And I will look for the book in Amazon for you. But this is the first one. It's called Clown Essential, The Art of Mocking Yourself. And the second one, since Align lives in Spain, they were going to send the books to Mexico. I have to see if they are in Puebla right now so I can get it. But if you Google him, he has done a lot of work, especially with Gestalt, and he's an amazing guy. I will later send you a picture of him and me together, because
looking forward to that. Looking forward to that.
Thank you so very much. I'll be quiet right now.
That's all good. That's all good. So I mean, let me just complete. So I was laughing a lot internally when Paritosh started, because I was going to hand over to Paritosh on this slide. And the quote that I picked up from David Bohm is exactly the quote that he started with. So out of all of the things, right? So that is where the connect is. But I mean, I wanted to talk very quickly on something a little more practical in terms of, let me find CBT. Yeah. So this is one very, and this we can apply it on ourselves, and we can apply it on our people whom we care, or our clients. So proprioceptive exposure, right? How can we use that in cognitive behavioral therapy? So the first is that all emotions have physical symptoms, right? We have increased heart rate, burning sensation in our stomachs, hands go cold, etc. And there is entire science around it, and we can talk about it in one of the sessions, that if somebody cannot tell what they are feeling, you can ask all the physical symptoms, and then you can derive what the feeling means for that, right? So it's very physical. So we can induce the symptoms on purpose when we are not feeling the emotional. So when you have an anxiety attack, right, what are the symptoms that you feel? So when you are not feeling the anxiety attack, right, induce the symptom on purpose. You could do jumping jacks, do planks, do fast breathing on purpose for 3 minutes, short breaths, right? And they're a very powerful thing, and it's very hard. You can take 1 or 2 or 3 straws and just breathe through the straw down, so that you are breathless a little bit. Cover the head. No, my spelling mistake, Jamin is a silly boy. So cover the head in towel, the claustrophobia. Do those things on purpose when you are not having emotional problems. Do this on purpose to induce the physical symptoms, so that you know this is how your body works. The second thing is then practice the conflict resolution, and there are multiple techniques of conflict resolutions: mindfulness breathing, mindfulness walking, observation. Some of this topic we talk on Sundays, feel free to join. But then one of the major things around anxiety or panic attack would be then recognize it, accept it, inquire why we have it, and then non-identification, the space between you and anger, for example, right? So practice that, not for the actual emotional attack, but for the equivalent physical attacks, right? So that induced, purposefully induced. So now your heartbeat is raised. Can you do a mindfulness 3 breaths and calm down your heart rate? And then you keep practicing it. What happens with that is now your mind predicts, and this is where efference and proprioception both comes into play. Next time when you, and that's the hope that we work towards this for ourselves and our clients, that when you actually have a panic attack, at least the physical symptoms are nothing new. It's nothing uncomfortable. You know it, right? Your mind then gives internal cue. Hey, your heart rate is raised. You breathe and it will come down. It's nothing. It's not going to escalate beyond this. This is not heart. This is not a earthquake. This is you moving your head, for example. In proprioception, you are aware. You're predicting the mind's next move, right? So you're okay. Now your heart's going. Now you're going to feel dizzy. You're going to faint. Do something. Start breathing, right? So you know the part and place in your mind where it is going. So I think where there are problems, where people have severe panic attacks, anxiety attacks, etc., I think this is one of the very nice ways to make themselves or ourselves, in case we are facing this, ready, using the proprioception exposure techniques in cognitive behavioral therapy, right? But I think beyond that, I think Jamin is done, right? So I don't have anything else from my content to send. But from what you heard in the last part, if you want to share anything or open for discussions further. Have you used, has anybody used this kind of approach, or heard anybody use this kind of approach of proprioception exposure technique to be ready for things?
Yes, actually, in my master's, we're studying exposure, and precisely that is the whole idea. We're as therapists, to help a person with a phobia, we first go exposing them in a safe environment in our office, and the first step is to make them feel that fear, feel that anxiety, with movements, with the imagery, you know, to make them get to that state without them actually being in front of that stimulus that gives them so much fear.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, it works. Yes. I've tried that personally, and I've tried that with my daughter as well. There were clothes hanging, and she's thinking, "Oh, what is this?" Right? And then we stepped it down slowly. We started sending in her a mid-lit room to touch what the clothes are, then a little bit darker, then now she can go around completely. Paritosh, you were saying something. Sorry, we interrupted.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So, yeah, so I think I just, a few minutes ago, Dr. Gitanjali was sharing something, and in her share, she said that I have feelings, and it really, this is really interesting to me because thankfully there is no one in this group who is a who belongs to grammar or literature or something, because I'm going to make a very grammatically error sentence, which is I has feelings, not I have feelings, or in other way, I is anger. And today we are talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, and in a more practical way how proprioception could be helpful in therapy and in the field of psychology, but just to explore it a bit theoretically, uh, before we go, I just wanted to read a paragraph written by Baum about proprioception, about thought can be proprioceptive or not. He was trying to explore it. So it could sound a bit theoretical, but I just wanted to read it because, after that, when we all leave this meeting, we all can think about it and reflect about it and to examine it. And if anyone is interested in reading about what Baum wrote or talked about proprioceptions, please feel free to ask me. I have a collection of those things in PDFs, in videos, so I would love to share with everyone. So the question is, can thought be proprioceptive? You have the intention to think, which you are not usually aware of. You think because you have an intention to think. It comes from the idea that is necessary to think, that there is a problem. If you watch, you will see an intention to think, an impulse to think. Then comes the thought, and the thought may give rise to a feeling, which might give rise to another intention to think, and so on. You are not aware of that. So the thought appears that if it were coming by itself, and the feeling appears to be coming by itself, and so on. That gives the wrong meaning. As in case of the women we talked about just now, he was referring to the same example I shared with all of you. You may get a feeling that you don't like from a thought, and then the second latter say, I have, I have got rid of that feeling. The suppression element he is talking about here. But your thought is still there working, especially if it's a thought that you take to be absolutely necessary. In fact, the problems we have been discussing are basically all due to this lack of proprioception. The point of suspension is to help make proprioception possible, to create a mirror so that you can see the results of your thought. You have it inside yourself because your body acts as a mirror and you can see tensions arising in the body. Also, other people are a mirror. The group is a mirror. He was talking about this kind of group, and if the group can be proprioceptive, if any kind of conversation and a dialogue group can be proprioceptive to itself. You have to see your intention. You get an impulse to say something, and then you see it is there, the result, at almost the same time. So if everybody is giving attention, then there will arise a new kind of thought between people, or even in the individual, which is proprioceptive and which doesn't get into the kind of tangle that thought gets into ordinarily, which is not proprioceptive. We could say that practically all the problems of the human race are due to the fact that thought is not proprioceptive. It's the same line Kevin shared, I shared. Thought is constantly creating problems that way and then trying to solve them. So, but as it arises to solve them, it makes it worse because it doesn't notice that it's creating them. And the thought, the feelings, the emotions, they are always working as a blockages to see what is the root of it. and the root of it could be the I, the self, the accumulation, the all psychological accumulation we have throughout our life since our childhood, and these things are working as boundaries that you can't look beyond that. So I think that's why whenever I say that I can be proprioceptive or proprioceptic, as personally my understanding, that when I say that I can be aware or I can be proprioceptive, but as I understand that if there is an I, there is no proprioception, because the proprioception is much more beyond the accumulation, the sense of I, because it inquires the I, the awareness. As I use this example a lot, that and I think proprioception and awareness, psychological awareness and proprioceptions, they both are synonymous. And I use it as an example, that the example of a river, that the awareness is just like a river. The origin of river is not river, and the ending point of river is also not river. The fish, the stones, the rocks, the banks, they are not river. The flow is river. And the moment you pick a bucket of water out of the river, that bucket of water is also not river, but the flow is river. And in that flow, there is no subject, there is no I. It's just an action, a complete movement, which we know as river. So that's all that I understand of this awareness of proprioception. So thank you everyone for listening.